He was a millionaire who spent his entire life trapped in a wheelchair, believing that nothing could change his destiny. In the middle of chaotic traffic, his wheelchair fails, and a poor girl appears to save him. With a simple touch, something impossible happens. He feels his legs for the first time. From that moment, a journey begins that challenges medicine and reveals a miracle hidden in the most unlikely hands. The morning sun cast long shadows across Fifth Avenue as Ethan Sullivan maneuvered his custom wheelchair through the crowded sidewalks of Manhattan. The sleek black electric chair, worth more than most people's cars, hummed softly beneath him as pedestrians parted like water around a stone. At 42, Ethan had built Sullivan Enterprises into a technology empire valued at billions, all from a chair he'd been confined to since birth. "Mr. Sullivan, your 10 o'clock cancelled," his assistant's voice chirped through his earpiece. "And the board wants to reschedule for Thursday." "Fine, Jennifer. That gives me time to review the quarterly projections before meeting with them," Ethan replied, his deep voice carrying the confidence of a man accustomed to command. He navigated towards Central Park, deciding to take advantage of the unexpected free time. People knew Ethan Sullivan's name. His face had graced the covers of Forbes and Time. What they didn't know was the emptiness that echoed through his penthouse apartment each night, or how the walls of his corner office sometimes felt like they were closing in despite the panoramic views of the city. The spring air felt unusually crisp as Ethan entered the park. He had always appreciated these moments of solitude amid the city's chaos. His fingers brushed over the control panel, increasing the chair's speed slightly as he followed the winding path. "Excuse me, Mr. Sullivan," a woman approached, recognition lighting her eyes. "I just wanted to say the work your foundation does for accessibility innovation is incredible." Ethan offered a practiced smile. "Thank you. We're just getting started." These interactions had become routine, admiration for his philanthropy, his business acumen, his inspirational story of success despite his disability. What they couldn't see was the man who had never felt the sand between his toes or known what it meant to stand eye to eye with another person. After a brief exchange, Ethan continued along the path, exiting the park's west side. He checked his watch. Nearly noon. His stomach growled, reminding him he'd skipped breakfast for an early meeting. A small bistro across Columbus Avenue caught his attention, its outdoor seating area bustling with lunchtime patrons. The traffic light turned green, and Ethan guided his chair off the curb. Halfway across the intersection, a jarring mechanical whine cut through the ambient noise of the city. His wheelchair stuttered, the control panel flickering before going dark. "No, not now," Ethan muttered, jabbing at the unresponsive controls. The chair had come to a complete stop in the center of the crosswalk. The distant wail of a car horn alerted him to the changing light. Traffic began to move. For the first time in years, real fear gripped Ethan Sullivan. Here in the middle of Columbus Avenue, the technology he relied on had abandoned him. A taxi swerved around him, the driver shouting obscenities. Another car braked hard, stopping inches from his chair. The traffic light had changed, vehicles accelerated forward, swerving to avoid him. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he frantically pressed the emergency restart button. Nothing. A delivery truck bore down on him, its driver distracted by a phone call. Ethan raised his hand in a futile attempt to signal the driver, knowing it was too late. Then came a force from behind, small but determined, pushing his heavy wheelchair toward the sidewalk. The truck missed him by inches, horn blaring as it passed. The chair rolled forward, guided by someone Ethan couldn't see. With a final push, the wheelchair mounted the curb and came to rest beside a newspaper stand. Ethan twisted in his seat, expecting to find a good Samaritan businessman or perhaps an off-duty cop. Instead, he found himself looking into the enormous brown eyes of a child, a girl no more than 8 years old, her small frame draped in clothes too large for her slight body. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and smudges of dirt marked her otherwise delicate features. You saved my life," Ethan said, still processing what had happened. The girl didn't respond, just stared at him with those penetrating eyes. "Thank you. What's your name?" The child remained silent, but she didn't leave. Instead, she circled his chair with curious attention, her fingers trailing along its sleek frame. "Are you alone? Where are your parents?" Ethan asked, looking around for an adult who might claim responsibility for this child hero. The girl stopped at his side and did something unexpected. She placed her small hands on his legs, his useless legs that had never known sensation, and looked up at him expectantly. What happened next would alter the course of Ethan Sullivan's life forever. A tingling sensation, faint but unmistakable, radiated from where the girl's hands rested on his thighs. For a man who had never felt anything below his waist, the sensation was so shocking that he gasped audibly. "What are you?" he began, but the words died in his throat as the tingling intensified. Then came something impossible. A twitch. A small, involuntary spasm in muscles that had never before responded to any stimulus. The girl smiled slightly, as though she had expected this reaction. Her hands remained on his legs for several more seconds before she stepped back, the connection broken. The sensation faded but didn't completely disappear. "Wait," Ethan called as the girl turned to leave. "Please, wait." But she was already moving away, slipping between pedestrians with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to going unnoticed. Ethan's chair chose that moment to return to life, the control panel lighting up as systems rebooted. He immediately guided the chair in the direction the girl had gone, but the crowded sidewalk and his momentary hesitation had given her too much of a head start. She had vanished. Ethan sat there in the middle of the sidewalk as New Yorkers streamed around him like he was just another obstacle in their path. His mind raced with questions, but one thought dominated all others. For the first time in 42 years, he had felt something in his legs, and he needed to find that girl again. Back in his office, Ethan couldn't focus on the acquisition proposal before him. The sensation had faded to a ghost of a memory, making him wonder if he had imagined it all. But the experience had been too vivid, too precise to be a hallucination. "Jennifer," he called, pressing the intercom button. "Cancel my meetings for the rest of the week. And get me Howard Reeves on the phone." Howard was the head of Sullivan Enterprises' security division, a former FBI agent with connections throughout the city. If anyone could find a nameless, silent girl in New York City, it would be Howard. Within 30 minutes, Howard stood before Ethan's desk, his expression professionally neutral as Ethan recounted the strange encounter. "So you want me to find this child based on a feeling in your legs?" Howard asked carefully. "I know how it sounds," Ethan replied, his voice sharp with frustration. "But I'm telling you, something happened, something that shouldn't be possible." Howard nodded slowly. "I'll need a description and the exact location and time. Columbus Avenue, just west of Central Park, around noon. She's small, probably 8 years old, dark hair, brown eyes, wearing clothes too big for her. Looked second-hand. Hispanic or possibly mixed race, and she didn't speak, not a single word. Could be a runaway," Howard mused, "or homeless. I'll check with shelters in the area, review security footage from nearby businesses. Use whatever resources you need." "Spare no expense," Ethan said, his voice taking on the commanding tone that had built his empire. "I need to find her, Howard. I need to understand what happened today." What Ethan couldn't articulate was the hope that had awakened in him, a dangerous, fragile hope he'd long ago learned to suppress. Because living without hope had been easier than living with it, and watching it die time and time again. "One more thing," Ethan added as Howard turned to leave. "Keep this quiet. No one else needs to know about this yet." After Howard left, Ethan wheeled himself to the floor-to-ceiling windows that lined his office. The city sprawled below him, millions of lives intersecting in countless ways. Somewhere out there was a silent child who had awakened something in him that decades of medical science had declared impossible. For the first time in years, Ethan Sullivan felt something beyond the familiar emotions of ambition and loneliness. He felt wonder. 3 days later, Ethan sat in his home office surrounded by a sea of reports and surveillance images. Howard had been thorough, pulling footage from every camera within a 6-block radius of their encounter. The girl appeared in several frames, always alone, always on the periphery. In one image, she slept on a bench. In another, she accepted food from a street vendor who seemed to know her. "We got a hit," Howard said, placing a folder on Ethan's desk. "Her name is Lily. At least that's what they call her at St. Catherine's Children's Home. She was found sleeping in Washington Square Park about 7 months ago. No identification, no record in the system. She hasn't spoken a word since they took her in." Ethan opened the folder, finding a formal photograph of the girl, cleaner than he'd seen her, but with the same solemn eyes. Selective mutism is what the psychologist called it, Howard continued. Apparently, she communicates through gestures and writing when necessary. The social worker's notes mention she seems intelligent but withdrawn. No one's claimed her, and they haven't been able to place her in foster care. Why not? Ethan asked, looking up from the file. She runs away from every placement within days. Always returns to the same areas of the city. The home has applied for special consideration to keep her despite being over capacity. They've grown attached to her. Ethan's fingers traced the edge of the photograph. I need to see her. I've arranged a meeting with the director tomorrow morning, Howard replied. Sister Margaret. She's been running St. Catherine's for 20 years. I told her you were interested in making a donation to their program for children with special needs. That's actually not a bad idea, Ethan mused. Set it up. That night, the tingling sensation returned, faint but persistent. Ethan lay awake, wondering if his mind was playing tricks on him, manufacturing phantom sensations because he wanted so desperately to believe. He had consulted with specialists for decades, undergone experimental treatments, all to no avail. The diagnosis had always been the same. The nerve damage from his congenital spinal malformation was irreversible. Yet, here he was, feeling something that had started with a child's touch. St. Catherine's Children's Home was housed in a converted brownstone in the Lower East Side, its brick facade worn but well maintained. Sister Margaret greeted Ethan at the entrance, her weathered face creasing into a smile that reached her eyes. Mr. Sullivan, it's an honor. Your foundation's work has made such a difference for children with disabilities. Ethan shook her hand, instantly warming to her genuine manner. The honor is mine, sister. May I see your facilities? As they toured the home, Ethan was struck by the contrast with the sterile institutions he'd visited in his philanthropic work. Despite limited resources, St. Catherine's felt like a home, walls decorated with children's artwork, communal spaces designed for interaction, small touches of comfort everywhere. We have 26 children currently, Sister Margaret explained. Technically, we're licensed for 20, but the need is so great. She led him to a small courtyard where children played under the watchful eyes of staff members. Many of our children have experienced trauma or have special needs that make placement difficult. Ethan scanned the area, his heart quickening when he spotted her. Lily sat alone under a maple tree, her hands moving in practiced motions over a small cloth doll. Even from a distance, there was an unmistakable focus to her movements, an intentionality that seemed beyond her years. Who is that? Ethan asked, though he knew perfectly well. Sister Margaret's expression softened. That's Lily. She's one of our special cases. Found alone in the park last fall. No identification, no one looking for her. She hasn't spoken a word since arriving, but she communicates in her own way. What is she doing with that doll? It's remarkable, actually. She seems to have an intuitive understanding of therapeutic massage. We discovered it by accident, when one of our staff had a migraine. Lily just walked up, put her hands on the woman's temples, and started these gentle movements. The headache was gone in minutes. Ethan watched, transfixed. Has she been taught this? Not by us. Our physical therapist, she volunteers twice a week, says Lily uses techniques that take professionals years to master. It's like she was born with this knowledge. As if sensing their attention, Lily looked up. Her eyes met Ethan's across the courtyard, and recognition flickered in their depths. She set down her doll and stood. She remembers me, Ethan murmured. Sister Margaret looked at him in surprise. You've met Lily before? She saved my life 3 days ago when my wheelchair malfunctioned in traffic, Ethan said simply, watching as Lily approached. She pushed me to safety. That explains it, Sister Margaret said with a sigh. She disappeared for several hours that day. We were worried sick. She's never gone that long before. Lily stopped a few feet away, studying Ethan with those penetrating eyes. Then, to Sister Margaret's visible surprise, she walked directly to Ethan's wheelchair and placed her small hand on his. Hello again, Ethan said softly. Thank you for helping me the other day. Lily's gaze intensified, and she reached toward his legs. Sister Margaret started to intervene, but Ethan shook his head slightly. It's all right. When Lily's hand settled on his knees, the sensation returned immediately, stronger this time. A pleasant warmth spread through his thighs, followed by the now familiar tingling. And then, unmistakably, his muscles contracted in a small but definite spasm. Sister Margaret gasped. "Did your leg just move?" "Yes," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It did." For the next hour, Ethan spoke with Sister Margaret in her office while Lily sat nearby, drawing intricate patterns that resembled flowing water. Ethan explained his condition, how he had been born with a spinal malformation that had left him without sensation or movement from the waist down. "I've seen the best specialists in the world," he said. "They all say the same thing, the nerve damage is permanent. But when Lily touched me that first day, I felt something. And just now, you saw it yourself." Sister Margaret nodded slowly. "I don't pretend to understand it, Mr. Sullivan. But I've worked with children long enough to know that sometimes they possess gifts beyond our comprehension. I want to help her," Ethan said decisively. "And yes, I'm hoping she can help me too. Would it be possible for her to visit my home? I could arrange for medical supervision, therapy." "Mr. Sullivan," Sister Margaret interrupted gently, "Lily is a ward of the state. There are procedures, regulations. Visitation would require approval from Child Services, and even then it would be supervised and limited." Ethan leaned forward. "What if I applied to become her foster parent?" The words surprised even him. He had never considered parenthood. His life was his work, his companies, his foundation. The idea of caring for a child, especially one with Lily's complex needs, should have terrified him. Instead, it felt right in a way few decisions ever had. Sister Margaret's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a commitment, Mr. Sullivan. Foster parenting isn't a part-time endeavor. I understand that. And I'm serious." His gaze drifted to Lily, who continued drawing, seemingly oblivious to their conversation. "She needs a stable home. I have resources that could give her the best care, the best education, and maybe," he hesitated, "maybe we need each other. Becoming a foster parent requires training, home studies, background checks. The process typically takes months. I'm aware, and I'm prepared to fulfill every requirement." Ethan's voice took on the determination that had built his business empire. "I want to start the process immediately." Sister Margaret studied him for a long moment. "You genuinely care about her well-being, don't you? This isn't just about what happened to your legs." "It started that way," Ethan admitted. "I won't deny that. But seeing her here, understanding what she's been through, I want to give her a home. Whether or not she ever helps me walk, she deserves stability and care." The nun's face softened. "I believe you, Mr. Sullivan. And for what it's worth, I think you might be exactly what Lily needs." She opened a drawer and removed a business card. "This is our caseworker at Child Protective Services. Tell her I suggested you call." As Ethan prepared to leave, Lily approached his wheelchair once more. This time she handed him one of her drawings, an intricate pattern of spirals and waves that somehow conveyed both motion and stillness. "Thank you," Ethan said, carefully folding the paper and placing it in his jacket pocket. "I'll see you again soon, Lily." "I promise." She didn't smile exactly, but something in her eyes lightened. For a brief moment, Ethan glimpsed the child beneath the solemn exterior, hopeful, intelligent, and perhaps just as lonely as he was. On the drive back to his office, Ethan called his personal physician. "Dr. Reynolds, I need you to arrange a complete neurological workup. Full imaging, nerve conduction studies, everything. Has something changed with your condition?" the doctor asked, concern evident in his voice. Ethan watched the city pass by his window, the drawing from Lily a tangible weight in his pocket. "Yes," he said simply, "something has definitely changed. Doctor." Amelia Chen studied the MRI images with the focused intensity that had made her one of the most sought-after neurologists on the East Coast. Ethan watched her face for any reaction, any hint of what she was seeing. "These are from 6 years ago?" she asked, gesturing to one set of images. "Yes," Ethan confirmed. "The most recent scans before last week." She nodded, turning her attention to the new images. The silence stretched until Ethan could no longer contain himself. "What do you see?" he asked. Dr. Chen removed her glasses, a gesture Ethan had come to recognize as her way of transitioning from detached analysis to direct communication. "There are changes in your neural pathways. Subtle but unmistakable. This area," she pointed to a section of his lower spine, "shows signs of activity that weren't present in your previous scans." "Is that even possible?" Every specialist has told me the damage was permanent. In cases like yours, with congenital malformations, we rarely see spontaneous improvement. But the human body is remarkably complex, Mr. Sullivan. There are documented cases of neurological function returning in ways we can't fully explain. Ethan leaned forward in his wheelchair. But you don't believe this is spontaneous, do you? Dr. Chen's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes betrayed her curiosity. You said these changes began after contact with a child? A girl with some sort of therapeutic ability? Yes. Each time she touches my legs, I feel sensation, and you saw the muscle response tests. There's definitely activity. I can't explain it medically, she admitted. The changes I'm seeing should take months or years of intensive neural stimulation, not days. If I hadn't done these scans myself, I might question their validity. Ethan had expected skepticism, perhaps even dismissal. Dr. Chen's cautious acknowledgement that something remarkable was happening exceeded his hopes. What does this mean for my prognosis? He asked, trying to keep his voice level despite the surge of emotion. I wouldn't make any predictions yet, she cautioned. These changes are real, but whether they'll lead to functional improvement, actual mobility, is another question entirely. I'd like to monitor you weekly, run more comprehensive tests. Of course. Dr. Chen hesitated, then asked, and the girl? Will you continue to have contact with her? I've applied to become her foster parent, Ethan said, watching carefully for the doctor's reaction. To her credit, Dr. Chen maintained her professional demeanor. I see. And is this decision related to these neurological changes? It started that way, Ethan admitted, but it's become much more than that. Lily needs a home, stability, and regardless of what happens with my condition, I want to provide that for her. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. If you do continue to see improvements, would you consider allowing me to document this case? With appropriate privacy safeguards, of course. Let's see where this goes first, Ethan replied. For now, I'd appreciate your discretion. The following weeks established a new rhythm to Ethan's life. Mornings were devoted to his companies, video conferences, strategic planning sessions, the usual business of empire building. Afternoons, however, belonged to Lily. Child Protective Services had granted limited visitation rights while Ethan's foster application was being processed. 3 times a week, Howard would drive Ethan to St. Catherine's, where he would spend 2 hours with Lily, under Sister Margaret's watchful eye. Their interactions began tentatively. Lily, despite having initiated contact during their first encounters, proved guarded in these structured visits. Ethan brought books, art supplies, and simple games, letting her set the pace of their engagement. On their 3rd visit, breakthrough came in the form of a chess set, a handcrafted collection of pieces Ethan had received as a gift years ago. Do you know how to play? He asked, not expecting much from an 8-year-old. To his surprise, Lily nodded. Her small fingers arranged the pieces with practiced precision. She played with remarkable skill, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of strategy that belied her age. Where did you learn to play like that? Ethan asked after she checkmated him in 15 moves. Lily didn't answer, of course, but her eyes held a spark of something. Pride, perhaps, or the simple pleasure of being truly seen. From that day forward, chess became their ritual. Ethan brought increasingly challenging puzzles and problems, which Lily solved with growing confidence. Between games, she would sometimes place her hands on his legs, her touch always bringing that now familiar sensation of tingling and occasional muscle response. Sister Margaret observed these sessions with quiet approval. She's different with you, she told Ethan one afternoon as Lily studied the chessboard. More present, more engaged. Ethan's home study was scheduled for the 6th week of this new routine. The social worker, Ms. Pearson, arrived at his penthouse with clipboard in hand and skepticism evident in her expression. Mr. Sullivan, she said after preliminary introductions, I'll be direct. We don't typically place children with single parents who work 70-hour weeks, regardless of their financial resources. I understand your concerns, Ethan replied, guiding his wheelchair through the apartment. But I've made arrangements to significantly reduce my workload. My COO has already assumed many of my day-to-day responsibilities. Ms. Pearson made notes as they toured the apartment. Ethan had spent considerable time preparing for this visit, working with a designer to transform one of the guest rooms into a space for Lily. The result was a room that balanced childlike wonder with room to grow, A canopy bed with star-patterned curtains, bookshelves filled with carefully selected titles, an art station near the windows that overlooked the park. "This is quite thoughtful," Miss Pearson admitted, softening slightly. "But a beautiful room doesn't address the fundamental concern. Lily has selective mutism and a history of running away from placements. She needs consistent therapeutic support and extraordinary patience. I've arranged for a child psychologist specializing in selective mutism to work with us," Ethan countered. "Dr. Rebecca Winters, her credentials are in the file I provided. She's agreed to in-home sessions 3 times weekly." They continued through the apartment, discussing security measures, educational plans, and Ethan's support system. By the end of the tour, they sat in the living room, the city skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. "May I ask why, Mr. Sullivan?" Ms. Pearson finally said. "With your resources, you could support dozens of children through your foundation. Why pursue fostering and potentially adoption of this particular child?" Ethan had anticipated this question and prepared a careful answer that omitted the neurological changes. But sitting there under Ms. Pearson's direct gaze, he found himself unwilling to offer half-truths. "Lily saved my life," he said simply. "Not just by pushing my wheelchair out of traffic, though she did that too. She showed me possibility where I'd accepted limitation. She's remarkable, intelligent, perceptive, gifted in ways I don't fully understand. And she's alone, as I've been alone despite all my success." He gestured to the emptiness of his beautiful apartment. "We recognize something in each other, Ms. Pearson. I think we can help each other heal." The social worker studied him for a long moment. "That's a lovely sentiment, Mr. Sullivan. But foster parenting, especially of a child with Lily's needs, will be the hardest thing you've ever done. Harder than building your companies, harder than living with your disability." "I'm counting on it," Ethan replied with a small smile. "Nothing worthwhile comes easily." That evening, Ethan received a call from Dr. Chen. "I've reviewed your latest tests," she said without preamble. "The improvement continues. The neural activity is spreading to adjacent pathways, and the muscle responses are more consistent." "What does that mean in practical terms?" Ethan asked, wheeling himself onto the terrace of his apartment, the night air cool against his face. "It means we should consider adding physical therapy to your regimen, targeted exercises to strengthen those muscles that are beginning to respond. I'd like to bring in Dr. Marcus Reed. He specializes in cases like yours." "Like mine," Ethan echoed with a short laugh. "I thought my case was unprecedented." "Spinal cord injuries with late-onset recovery," Dr. Chen clarified, "though I admit the circumstances of your improvement are unique." After ending the call, Ethan remained on the terrace contemplating the city lights. 6 weeks ago, his life had been defined by what he couldn't do, couldn't feel, couldn't experience. Now each day brought new sensations, new possibilities, and perhaps, soon, a child who would change everything. The approval from Child Protective Services came 3 days later, faster than expected, though Ethan suspected his resources and connections had expedited the process. Lily would be placed with him initially for a 3-month trial period, with weekly visits from Ms. Pearson and continued sessions with Dr. Winters. The day Lily arrived at his home was unseasonably warm for early summer. Ethan waited in the lobby of his building, Howard standing discreetly nearby. When the car from St. Catherine's pulled up, Sister Margaret emerged first, followed by Lily, clutching a small backpack and the cloth doll Ethan had first seen her manipulating in the courtyard. "Welcome, Lily," Ethan said, his voice suddenly thick with emotion. "I'm so glad you're here." Lily studied the soaring lobby with wide eyes, taking in the marble floors, the modern art, the uniformed doorman. Then her gaze returned to Ethan, and she stepped forward, placing her small hand in his. Sister Margaret blinked rapidly, her eyes suspiciously bright. "She's ready," she said softly. "We've talked about this change, as much as one can talk with Lily. She understands she'll be living with you now." As they rode the elevator to the penthouse, Ethan felt an unfamiliar nervousness. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals with less apprehension than he felt introducing this silent child to her new home. "I hope you'll like it here," he said, as the elevator doors opened directly into his apartment. "I have a room prepared for you, but we can change anything you don't like." Lily stepped into the penthouse, her hand still in Ethan's. For the first time since he'd met her, A genuine smile transformed her solemn face as she took in her new surroundings. And in that moment, Ethan Sullivan, businessman, philanthropist, billionaire, became something he had never expected to be: a father. Mornings in the Sullivan penthouse took on a new rhythm. Ethan, accustomed to waking before dawn to review international markets, now found himself adjusting his schedule to accommodate breakfast with Lily at 7:30 sharp. She was methodical in her routines, clothes laid out the night before, backpack organized with precision, not a minute wasted. "Would you like blueberries in your oatmeal today?" Ethan asked, maneuvering his wheelchair alongside the specially designed kitchen island that allowed him to prepare simple meals. Lily nodded, watching intently as he added the fruit. Her scrutiny had been unnerving at first, those observant eyes missing nothing, but Ethan had grown to appreciate her attentiveness. She was learning from him, just as he was learning from her. After breakfast came what they had begun calling therapy time. In the sunlit room Ethan had converted into a home gym, Dr. Reed guided them through exercises designed to stimulate Ethan's awakening neural pathways. "Good, that's it," Dr. Reed encouraged, as Ethan concentrated on moving his right foot. The motion was minimal, a slight flex of his ankle, but it represented progress that would have seemed miraculous 8 weeks ago. Lily sat cross-legged on a yoga mat nearby, watching with that familiar intensity. Occasionally she would move to Ethan's side, placing her small hands on his legs in specific patterns that Dr. Reed had come to respect, if not understand. "Her instincts are remarkable," the physical therapist had commented after their first session together. "She's targeting pressure points that correspond exactly with the neural pathways we're trying to activate." Today, Lily approached after Ethan had been working for 20 minutes, his face showing signs of fatigue. Without prompting, she began a series of gentle manipulations, her fingers finding points of tension with unerring accuracy. The sensation that followed was now familiar, but no less astonishing: warmth spreading through muscles that had been dormant for decades, followed by tingling that signaled awakening nerves. Under her touch, Ethan found he could extend the movement of his foot further, the motion more controlled. "Incredible," Dr. Reed murmured, making notes. "Whatever she's doing, it's amplifying the effect of our conventional therapy by orders of magnitude." After an hour, they concluded the session. Lily had school, a private institution with experience in children with selective mutism, and Ethan had a board meeting he couldn't reschedule. "We'll practice again tonight," Ethan promised, as Jennifer arrived to drive Lily to school. The girl nodded, her expression serious as always, but she squeezed Ethan's hand before leaving, their private form of communication that meant more than words. The Sullivan Enterprises boardroom fell silent as Ethan entered. For 20 years he had commanded this space, his wheelchair a familiar presence at the head of the table. Today, however, the directors noticed something different. "Ethan," Marcus Whitfield, the longest-serving board member, spoke first. "You look, well." There was an unspoken question in the statement. Ethan had chosen not to disclose the changes in his condition, partly from privacy concerns and partly from a scientist's caution about preliminary results. "Thank you, Marcus. Shall we begin?" The acquisition proposal for Tech Dynamics is first on the agenda. For the next 2 hours, Ethan led the meeting with his usual sharp focus, though his thoughts occasionally drifted to Lily. Would she use the communication cards Dr. Winters had provided for school? Would the other children be kind to her? The concerns were new and unfamiliar, a different type of responsibility than managing a global corporation. As the meeting concluded, his COO, Rachel Martinez, lingered behind. "Something's different," she said directly, once they were alone. "You've been leaving early, coming in late, taking whole afternoons off, and now you're practically glowing with health. What's going on, Ethan?" They had worked together for 15 years, building Sullivan Enterprises from a promising startup into a technology leader. If anyone deserved an explanation, it was Rachel. "I've become a foster parent," Ethan said, deciding to share the part of his life change that would eventually become public knowledge. "A girl named Lily. She's 8 years old, with selective mutism." Rachel's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. "You? A father?" "Foster father for now," Ethan corrected. "Though I hope to adopt her eventually. That explains the schedule changes, but not—" She gestured vaguely at him. "This. You seem different physically." Ethan hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. "I'm trying an experimental therapy. It's showing some promise." Rachel studied him, clearly sensing there was more to the story, but nodded. "Well, whatever it is, it suits you. I haven't seen you this energized in years." That evening, after Lily had completed her homework and they had shared a quiet dinner, Ethan suggested they continue their therapy exercises. To his surprise, Lily shook her head firmly. Instead, she retrieved a small notebook from her backpack and wrote in careful letters, "Piano." Ethan glanced at the baby grand piano that stood in the corner of the living room, a showpiece he had purchased years ago because it complemented the decor, not because he played. "You want to play the piano?" he asked. Lily nodded emphatically, leading him toward the instrument. She positioned his wheelchair beside the bench, then seated herself and patted the space next to her. "I don't play," Ethan explained, but Lily's expression remained insistent. With some maneuvering, Ethan transferred himself from the wheelchair to the piano bench. Lily immediately took his hands and placed them on the keys, her small fingers positioning his larger ones. Then she began to guide him, pressing his fingers to create a simple melody. The tune was unfamiliar but oddly compelling, rhythmic with a gentle pulsing quality that reminded Ethan of a heartbeat. After repeating the sequence several times, Lily released his hands and looked at him expectantly. "You want me to play it back?" Ethan asked and received a nod in response. Hesitantly, he attempted to recreate the melody. His first effort was clumsy, the timing off, but Lily simply repositioned his fingers and guided him again. On his third attempt, he managed a reasonable approximation of the tune. Lily's face lit up with rare animation. She scooted closer on the bench and placed her hands on his legs while he continued to play the simple melody. The effect was immediate and stronger than anything he had experienced during their formal therapy sessions. The warmth and tingling intensified, spreading from his thighs to his knees, then down to his ankles. And with it came a startling new sensation, a rhythmic pulsing that matched the tempo of the music. "My legs," Ethan gasped. They're keeping time with the music." Lily nodded, unsurprised, as if this had been her plan all along. She kept her hands in place and Ethan continued playing, marveling as the involuntary movements in his legs grew more pronounced. When they finally stopped, nearly an hour later, Ethan was physically exhausted but mentally exhilarated. He transferred back to his wheelchair, noticing that the effort seemed slightly less taxing than usual. "How did you know?" he asked Lily as he tucked her into bed later that night. "How did you know the music would help?" Lily didn't answer, of course, but she reached for her notebook and wrote, "Rhythms help pathways, remember." Ethan stared at the words, astonished. "Who taught you that, Lily? How do you understand these things?" She simply shook her head, her expression suggesting this knowledge was as natural to her as breathing. Then she wrote one more thing before settling into sleep. "I remember what bodies forget." The next morning, Ethan called Dr. Chen. "I need to tell you about something that happened last night," he said, describing the piano session and the remarkable response in his legs. "Rhythmic stimulation combined with touch therapy," Dr. Chen mused. "There's research on this approach for spinal cord injuries, but it's still experimental. The fact that Lily intuitively applied this technique, it's extraordinary." "She wrote something afterward," Ethan continued. "Rhythms help pathways remember, and I remember what bodies forget." Does that mean anything to you medically? There's a concept in neuroplasticity about reawakening dormant neural pathways, essentially reminding the nervous system of connections that once existed or could exist. The rhythmic component acts as a mnemonic device for the nervous system. Dr. Chen paused. "But an 8-year-old conceptualizing it this way, I have no explanation for that. We need to incorporate music into my therapy regimen," Ethan decided, "and I want to arrange piano lessons for Lily." Within days, a new schedule emerged. Mornings began with conventional physical therapy, followed by piano practice, where Lily would guide Ethan through increasingly complex melodies. In the evenings, they would play together, Lily's hands alternating between the keys and therapeutic touch on Ethan's legs. Progress accelerated dramatically. By the end of the second week of this new regimen, Ethan could consciously move both feet and had begun experiencing sensation as high as mid-thigh. Dr. Reed documented everything, his professional skepticism giving way to cautious excitement. "We're seeing regeneration patterns that defy conventional understanding," he told Ethan during one session. At this rate, you might achieve functional movement of your lower extremities within months rather than years. Lily thrived under the new routine as well. Her school reported small but significant progress. She had begun using her communication cards more frequently and had formed a tentative friendship with another girl in her class. At home, the piano became her voice, her fingers expressing through music what she couldn't say in words. As the 3-month foster placement mark approached, Ms. Pearson's visits took on new significance. The social worker had noticed the changes in both Ethan and Lily. "She's showing remarkable progress," Ms. Pearson commented during one visit, watching as Lily composed a simple tune at the piano. "And I must admit, Mr. Sullivan, so are you. Not just physically, though that's evident as well. You've adapted to parenthood with unexpected grace." "She makes it easy," Ethan replied, his gaze softening as he watched Lily. "She's the most extraordinary person I've ever met. Have you considered what happens after the initial placement period? Your application for extended fostering with intent to adopt is being reviewed, but I should prepare you. There could be complications." "What kind of complications?" Ethan asked, his attention sharpening. "Standard procedure includes continued efforts to locate biological family members. Given Lily's lack of documentation, those efforts have been challenging, but not impossible. If biological family were to come forward, the implication hung in the air. Ethan felt a sudden chill despite the warmth of the apartment. "Has someone come forward?" he asked directly. "Not yet," Ms. Pearson assured him, "but the search continues. I just want you to be prepared for all possibilities." After she left, Ethan found himself unusually distracted. The thought of losing Lily now, after she had transformed his life so completely, was unbearable. Yet he couldn't dismiss the possibility that somewhere, someone was searching for her. Parents who might have lost her through circumstances beyond their control. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan made a decision. He called Howard Reeves. "I need you to conduct a search," he said without preamble, "more thorough than what Child Protective Services is doing. I want to know if Lily has family out there, and if so, what circumstances led to her being alone in that park." "You realize what you're asking," Howard replied carefully. "If I find family, you might lose her." "I realize that," Ethan said, his voice tight with emotion. "But she deserves to know where she came from. And if there's someone out there who loves her, who lost her through tragedy or circumstance, they deserve to know she's safe." After ending the call, Ethan wheeled himself to Lily's room, quietly opening the door to check on her. She slept peacefully, her small form curled around the cloth doll she still kept close. In just 3 months, this silent child had awakened not only dormant nerves in his legs, but something deeper, a capacity for love and connection he had never fully developed. Whatever came next, Ethan knew with certainty that his life would never return to what it had been before. Lily had changed him irrevocably, in ways that transcended the physical miracle unfolding in his body. As he watched her sleep, a thought formed with perfect clarity. Whatever it took, whoever might come forward, he would ensure that Lily's well-being remained the priority, even if it meant letting her go. Howard's investigation proceeded with methodical precision. Using advanced facial recognition software, he cross-referenced Lily's image against missing persons databases across the country. Simultaneously, he collected DNA samples, a strand of hair from Lily's brush, submitted discreetly to a private lab for analysis and comparison against genetic databases. Meanwhile, life in the Sullivan household continued its new rhythm. 5 months had passed since Lily had first pushed Ethan's wheelchair to safety, 3 months since she had come to live with him. In that time, they had developed a relationship that defied conventional labels, part father-daughter, part patient-healer, part mutual salvation. Ethan's physical progress had begun to attract attention. Dr. Chen had documented everything meticulously, but had honored Ethan's request for privacy. Still, the medical community was small, and rumors spread of a businessman with congenital spinal malformation showing unprecedented neural regeneration. "We should consider publishing a preliminary case study," Dr. Chen suggested during one of their weekly reviews. "The implications for spinal cord injury treatment could be revolutionary." "Not yet," Ethan replied. "I'm not ready to share Lily's involvement. She's been through enough without becoming a medical curiosity." Dr. Chen nodded, though her scientific curiosity was evident. At least consider allowing me to present the physiological data anonymously. Without mentioning the therapeutic source, Ethan agreed to this compromise. The results of his latest scans were remarkable. Neural pathways once thought irreparably damaged now showed significant activity. The practical effects were equally impressive. With support bars, Ethan could now stand for short periods. His legs, atrophied from decades of disuse, were strengthening through daily therapy. One evening, as fall painted Central Park in fiery hues visible from their windows, Ethan and Lily sat at the piano together. Their musical sessions had evolved. Lily now played melodies while Ethan accompanied with simple bass lines, his fingers growing more dexterous with practice. Between songs, Lily reached for her notebook, her primary mode of communication at home, though she still didn't speak. She wrote, "Tomorrow special practice." "Special how?" Ethan asked, intrigued by the determined set of her features. "Standing," she wrote, "no bars." Ethan felt a flutter of apprehension. "Lily, Dr. Reed says I'm not ready for unsupported standing yet. The risk of falling—" She shook her head firmly and added, "I will help. Trust me." Her earnest expression melted his resistance. "All right, but we'll be careful." The next day, after Lily returned from school, she led Ethan to the home gym where they conducted their therapy sessions. She positioned his wheelchair near the padded exercise mat and motioned for him to prepare for transfer. Instead of the support bars they typically used, Lily stood before him, her small hands extended. Ethan hesitated, calculating the physics of the situation, his adult weight against her child's strength. "Lily, I don't think—" She gave him a look that brooked no argument, one he had come to recognize as her healer's gaze. Focused, certain, brooking no doubt. Carefully, Ethan shifted to the edge of his wheelchair. Following the techniques Dr. Reed had taught him, he positioned his feet flat on the floor. Using his arms for leverage against the wheelchair's armrests, he began to push himself upward. The familiar strain coursed through his upper body as he lifted himself. Usually he would grasp the support bars at this point, using them to stabilize as his legs took partial weight. Today, he reached for Lily's outstretched hands instead. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her stance solid as she helped him balance. For a breathtaking moment, Ethan stood, wobbly, uncertain but upright, with only Lily's hands for support. Then she did something unexpected. She began to hum a melody, the first one she had taught him on the piano. The rhythm instantly triggered a response in his legs, a sympathetic vibration that seemed to strengthen the neural connections. "It's working," Ethan whispered, astonished as his stance steadied slightly. "Lily, how did you know?" She continued humming, her eyes locked with his in fierce concentration. Then, still holding his hands, she took a small step backward. "No, I can't," Ethan began, but she squeezed his hands insistently. Drawing a deep breath, Ethan focused on his right foot. The movement was awkward, more of a slide than a proper step, but his foot moved forward. Then the left. One excruciating inch at a time, he followed Lily's backward movement across the mat. 6 steps. 6 miraculous steps before his strength gave out, and he sank back into the wheelchair, sweat beading on his forehead from the effort. Lily's face shone with quiet triumph as she handed him a towel. "That was—" Ethan struggled to find words adequate to the moment. "Lily, do you understand what just happened? I walked. Stand, what?" "For the first time in my life, I walked." She nodded, unsurprised, as if she had always known this outcome was inevitable. She reached for her notebook and wrote, "Your body remembers now." That evening, Ethan called Dr. Chen and Dr. Reed to report the breakthrough. Both insisted on coming to the penthouse immediately, their professional reserve giving way to undisguised excitement. "This defies everything in the medical literature," Dr. Reed said after witnessing Ethan repeat the assisted walking, this time with the doctor's support rather than Lily's. "The neural regeneration is remarkable enough, but the functional adaptation, your body learning movements it's never performed before, that's beyond anything I've seen." Dr. Chen was equally amazed, but more measured. "We need to understand the mechanism. The combination of music therapy, manual stimulation, and whatever intuitive techniques Lily is applying, it's producing results that should be impossible." As the doctors conferred in the living room, Ethan wheeled himself to Lily's bedroom to check on her. The evening's excitement had extended past her usual bedtime, and she had finally retired, clearly fatigued from the intense therapeutic session. He found her already asleep, her notebook open beside her. On the page was a drawing, stick figures of a man and a child, holding hands, both standing upright. Beneath it she had written, "Soon." Ethan gently closed the notebook and adjusted her blanket. As he did, his hand brushed against something tucked beneath her pillow, the cloth doll she had carried since their first meeting. Curious, he carefully eased it out for a closer look. In the soft lamplight, he examined the doll more carefully than he had before. It was handmade, crafted from what appeared to be repurposed fabric, a soft blue material for the body, darker scraps for clothing. The stitching was precise, professional rather than childlike. As he turned it over, Ethan noticed something unusual, a small pocket sewn into the back of the doll. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Hesitating only briefly, Ethan extracted it and unfolded it carefully. It was a photograph, creased and worn as if handled frequently. In it, a younger Lily, perhaps 3 or 4 years old, sat on the lap of a woman whose features echoed her own. They shared the same dark eyes, the same solemn expression. On the back, written in elegant script, were the words, "My Sarah and Lily, always together in my heart." Sarah, a name, the first concrete clue to Lily's past. Ethan carefully returned the photograph to its hiding place and tucked the doll back under Lily's pillow. His mind raced with implications. Should he tell Howard about this discovery? It could accelerate the search for Lily's family. Or should he wait, protect this moment of triumph and joy before facing whatever complications might arise? The decision was made for him the following morning when his phone rang. Howard's number flashed on the screen. "We have a hit," Howard said without preamble. "DNA database returned a partial match, likely a close relative. I've been tracking down the connection, and I think I've found her mother." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "Tell me." "Her name is Sarah Miller, 32 years old, works as a massage therapist and physical therapy assistant in Boston. 5 years ago, she reported her 3-year-old daughter missing after leaving her with a caretaker while undergoing cancer treatment. The caretaker, an elderly woman, suffered a stroke and was found unresponsive in her home. The child was gone. Sarah, the name from the photograph. This couldn't be coincidence. Is she?" Ethan's voice caught. "Did she recover from the cancer?" "Yes, she's been in remission for 4 years. And Ethan, she never stopped looking for her daughter. She maintains a website, social media accounts dedicated to finding her. There are annual vigils, interviews. She's never given up." The knot in Ethan's stomach tightened. "Does she know about Lily yet?" "No, I wanted to consult with you first. This is complicated." Complicated was an understatement. In the months since Lily had entered his life, Ethan had begun adoption proceedings, restructured his business to accommodate parenthood, and experienced medical miracles previously thought impossible. The thought of losing her now was physically painful. Yet the photograph haunted him. The woman who shared Lily's eyes, the inscription that spoke of love and connection. A mother who had never stopped searching for her child. "I need to think about this," Ethan said finally. "Give me a day." That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan sat alone on the terrace of his penthouse. The city lights blurred as he confronted the choice before him. He could delay, perhaps even prevent the reunion. With his resources, his connections, he could ensure the adoption proceeded without interference. But what kind of father would that make him? What lesson would it teach Lily about love, about integrity, about the meaning of family? The next morning, Ethan called Howard back. "Contact her," he said, the words painful but necessary. "Sarah Miller. Tell her we may have found her daughter, but proceed carefully. This needs to be handled with Lily's well-being as the priority." 2 days later, Ethan sat across from Ms. Pearson in his living room, Lily at school, unaware of the conversation taking place. "The DNA comparison is conclusive," the social worker confirmed. "Sarah Miller is Lily's biological mother. She's been officially notified and has provided documentation validating her claim. She's requesting a reunion as soon as possible." "What happens now?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. Typically, in cases of family reunification, the child would be returned to the biological parent, assuming they pass all current fitness evaluations. Ms. Miller has already begun that process in Massachusetts. And my adoption petition? Ms. Pearson's expression was sympathetic but professional. It would normally be superseded by the biological parent's rights. However, this situation has unique aspects. Lily has formed a significant attachment to you. And there's the matter of her selective mutism, which has shown improvement in your care. Ethan nodded, processing this information. When will she come to New York? Sarah Miller? She's arranging travel now. We'd like to schedule an initial supervised meeting within the week. After Ms. Pearson left, Ethan remained in his wheelchair, staring out at the city skyline. For the first time since beginning therapy with Lily, he attempted to stand independently. Using the techniques she had taught him, he managed 3 seconds of wobbly balance before sinking back down. Progress and loss intertwined. The miracle of first steps shadowed by the prospect of goodbye. That night he showed Lily the photograph from her doll. "Is this your mother, Lily?" "Her name is Sarah." Lily took the photograph, her fingers tracing the image with evident recognition. She nodded slowly, then reached for her notebook. "Mama sick," she wrote. "Mama crying." "She was sick," Ethan confirmed gently. "She had cancer, but she's better now and she never stopped looking for you." "Found me?" Lily wrote, her eyes wide. "Yes. She's coming to see you soon." Lily stared at the photograph for a long moment. Then she wrote, "Happy and sad." "That's exactly how I feel too," Ethan admitted. "Happy that you might have your mother back. Sad because I'll miss you terribly." Lily's brow furrowed in confusion. She wrote, "Why miss? Still here." "Well, if your mother has recovered, you'll probably go to live with her. She's your family." Lily shook her head vehemently and wrote, "You family too." The simple declaration broke something open in Ethan's chest, grief and hope mingling in equal measure. He pulled Lily into a gentle hug, which she returned with surprising strength. "We'll figure it out," he promised, though he had no idea how. "Whatever happens, your happiness comes first." 3 days later, Howard called again. "There's more to Sarah Miller's story," he said. "Her family has a history of alternative healing practices. Her grandmother was some kind of renowned therapeutic touch practitioner, and Sarah herself experienced selective mutism as a teenager, especially after trauma." Ethan absorbed this information, pieces falling into place. That explains Lily's intuitive abilities, the therapeutic touch, the understanding of neural pathways. It's in her blood. "There's something else," Howard added. "Sarah Miller suffered a relapse of selective mutism after losing her daughter. She's only recently recovered her speech fully. Like mother, like daughter, both responding to trauma with silence, both possessing extraordinary healing abilities. The connection was undeniable, a genetic heritage that explained so much about the remarkable child who had changed Ethan's life." The meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. As Ethan helped Lily prepare, he fought to maintain a positive demeanor despite his apprehension. Whatever happened next would change both their lives irrevocably. He only hoped that the bond they had formed would survive the transformation. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth, sunlight streaming through the penthouse windows as Ethan and Lily waited. Ms. Pearson had arrived early to prepare them both, explaining the protocol for the reunion while watching Lily for signs of distress. "She seems remarkably calm," the social worker observed, as Lily arranged and rearranged chess pieces on the board, a self-soothing behavior Ethan had come to recognize. "She understands more than we realize," Ethan replied. "Always has." The elevator chimed, announcing Howard's arrival with their visitor. Ethan positioned his wheelchair near the sofa where Lily sat, close enough to offer support, but giving her space for the reunion. His heart hammered against his ribs, equal parts dread and hope swirling through him. The apartment door opened, and Sarah Miller stepped inside. Ethan's first thought was how strongly Lily resembled her mother. The same watchful dark eyes, the same delicate features. Sarah was slim, her movements fluid and graceful, despite the obvious tension in her shoulders. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore no makeup, giving her an appearance of natural elegance. For a moment, no one moved. Sarah stood frozen in the entryway, her gaze locked on Lily. The child remained seated, her expression unreadable. "Lily?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, fragile with emotion. "My Lily." Slowly, Lily stood. She took one step forward, then another, her movements cautious but deliberate. Sarah knelt, bringing herself to Lily's eye level, tears streaming unchecked down her face. "I never stopped looking for you, not for one day." Lily reached out, her small hand hovering near Sarah's cheek, a gesture reminiscent of how she often approached Ethan before their therapeutic sessions. Then, with gentle precision, she touched her mother's face, her fingers tracing the contours with familiar intentionality. Sarah's eyes widened at the touch, recognition flaring in their depths. "You remember?" she breathed. "The way I used to touch you, the healing patterns." Lily nodded, and then something extraordinary happened. Her lips parted, and a single word emerged, the first Ethan had ever heard her speak. "Mama." The sound, though soft, seemed to fill the entire apartment. Sarah gave a cry that was half laugh, half sob, and gathered Lily into her arms. They clung to each other, the years of separation collapsing in that embrace. Ethan watched, his throat tight with emotion. The reunion was everything he had hoped for Lily: healing, joyful, a completion of something broken. Yet beneath his genuine happiness for her lay a current of grief, of anticipated loss. Miss Pearson touched his arm gently. "This is going well," she murmured. "Better than we could have hoped." After several minutes, Sarah looked up, seeming to fully register Ethan's presence for the first time. Keeping one arm around Lily, she extended her other hand toward him. "Mr. Sullivan," she said, her voice steadier now, "I don't know how to thank you for finding my daughter, for caring for her." Ethan wheeled forward, accepting her handshake. "No thanks necessary, Miss Miller. Lily has been—" He paused, searching for words adequate to express what the child had meant to him. "She's changed my life in ways I can't begin to explain." Sarah studied him with the same perceptive gaze that Lily possessed. "Howard Reeves explained some of it. About your condition, and how Lily has been helping you. Would you like some tea?" Ethan offered, suddenly aware of the strangeness of the situation. This woman who was both stranger and family, connected to him through the child they both loved. "We have a lot to talk about." The afternoon unfolded in a series of revelations. Over tea in the living room, with Lily nestled between them on the sofa, Sarah shared her story. The cancer diagnosis when Lily was 3, the desperate search for childcare when her treatment became too debilitating. "My grandmother," Lily's great-grandmother, had been her primary caretaker when I worked, but she had just passed away. Eleanor Reyes, my neighbor, offered to help. She was in her 70s, kind, but not in the best health. Sarah's voice wavered. "I was so desperate, so sick. I thought it would just be for a few months, until I completed the most intensive treatments." Ethan nodded, understanding the impossible choices that illness forced upon people. Eleanor had a stroke while Lily was in her care. When emergency services found her, Lily was gone. There was evidence someone had been in the apartment. We think whoever found Eleanor took Lily, perhaps intending to get her help, but then— Sarah shook her head. 5 years of not knowing, of imagining every possible scenario. "How did you survive that?" Ethan asked softly. "Some days I didn't think I would," Sarah admitted. "The cancer went into remission, but the grief, the not knowing, that was a different kind of illness. I stopped speaking for almost 2 years. It's a family trait, this retreating into silence when trauma becomes too much to bear." Lily, who had been listening intently, took her mother's hand and placed it over her own throat, then shook her head. "You couldn't speak either," Sarah translated, understanding immediately. "Oh, my sweet girl." Ethan marveled at their connection, the unspoken understanding that transcended their years apart. "Howard mentioned your family has a history of therapeutic touch practices." Sarah nodded. "My grandmother was known for it. She could ease pain, reduce inflammation, sometimes even help with neurological conditions. She taught me from childhood, and I was teaching Lily before—" She trailed off, then continued more strongly. "It's why I became a massage therapist and went back to school for physical therapy. I wanted to combine our family's traditional practices with modern medicine." "That explains Lily's remarkable abilities," Ethan said. "From the first time she touched my legs, there was response in nerves that had never been active before." "May I ask about your condition?" Sarah inquired carefully. Ethan explained his congenital spinal malformation, the lifelong paralysis, and the unprecedented changes since meeting Lily. As he spoke, he demonstrated his newly acquired ability to stand briefly without support, though he still used the wheelchair for mobility. Sarah watched with professional interest. The combination of rhythmic stimulation with targeted pressure is a technique my grandmother developed. She called it neural reawakening. I've used modified versions with patients who have partial paralysis, but never with someone whose condition was congenital. The conversation continued as afternoon faded into evening. Miss Pearson, satisfied with the positive interaction, departed with a reminder of their follow-up appointment the next day. Howard remained discreetly in the background, occasionally bringing refreshments, but otherwise giving them privacy. As dinner time approached, Ethan suggested ordering in. There's an excellent Italian restaurant nearby that delivers. Lily's favorite is their margherita pizza. Sarah smiled at this detail, this evidence that Ethan truly knew her daughter. That sounds perfect. While they waited for the food, Lily tugged at both their hands, leading them to the piano. She positioned Ethan on the bench, then guided Sarah to sit beside him. She wants us to play together, Ethan explained. Music has been a crucial part of our therapy regimen. Of course, Sarah said, a look of understanding crossing her face. Rhythm was always part of our family's healing practice. My grandmother would hum specific tones while working. Lily nodded emphatically, pleased at this connection. She placed Sarah's hands on the higher keys, then positioned Ethan's on the lower register. With careful guidance, she showed them a simple duet, her small fingers directing theirs until they could play it together. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, neither entirely happy nor sad, but something more complex, a musical representation of their unusual situation. As they played, Lily stood behind them, one hand on Ethan's shoulder, the other on Sarah's. The touch seemed to connect them, creating a circuit of energy that flowed between the three of them. Ethan felt the now familiar warmth and tingling in his legs, but also something new, a sense of balance, of completion, as if Lily's connection to both of them amplified her healing abilities. When they finished playing, Lily wrote in her notebook, "Stronger together." The words lingered in Ethan's mind throughout dinner, which was filled with gentler conversation. Sarah sharing stories of Lily's early childhood, Ethan recounting their chess matches and school progress. Despite the inherent awkwardness of their situation, there was an ease between them, a shared devotion to Lily that transcended other concerns. After Lily had gone to bed, Ethan and Sarah sat in the living room, the nighttime city visible through the windows. The moment of reckoning had arrived. "What happens now?" Ethan asked, voicing the question that had haunted him since Howard's discovery. Sarah cradled her tea, her expression thoughtful. "Legally, as her biological mother with no history of unfitness, I have primary rights. The courts would likely grant me full custody." Ethan nodded, having expected this answer. "I understand she belongs with you. But," Sarah continued, "that may not be what's best for Lily." She set down her cup and leaned forward. "Mr. Sullivan, Ethan, please." "Ethan, I've spent 5 years imagining this reunion, dreaming of the day I'd find my daughter. But in none of those dreams did I consider that she might have formed a profound bond with someone else, that she might have become a healer in her own right, helping someone who needs her." Hope stirred in Ethan's chest, though he kept his expression neutral. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not entirely sure yet," Sarah admitted. "I live in Boston. My practice is there, my support system. Moving Lily immediately would mean another disruption in her life. More change when she's finally found stability with you." "You could relocate to New York," Ethan suggested. "I have connections, resources. I could help you establish a practice here." Sarah smiled gently. "That's generous, but there's my mother to consider as well. She's not well enough to relocate, and she's been waiting just as long to reunite with her granddaughter." They sat in silence for a moment, the complexity of their situation settling around them. "What if," Ethan said slowly, "we considered a shared arrangement? Not immediately, but as a goal. Lily divides her time between us, maintains connections to both her families." "That could work," Sarah agreed, relief evident in her voice. "A transition period first. I could stay in New York for a few weeks, spend time with Lily while maintaining her routine, get to know her again in the environment where she feels secure. My guest suite is at your disposal," Ethan offered immediately. "Or I can arrange a hotel nearby if you'd prefer." The guest suite would be perfect. It would give Lily continuous access to both of us, let her set the pace of our reconnection. Sarah hesitated, then added, and it would allow me to better understand the therapeutic work you've been doing together, perhaps even contribute to it. The possibility hung between them, not just coexistence for Lily's sake, but collaboration, a joining of Sarah's trained healing abilities with Lily's intuitive gifts and Ethan's resources. "I think Lily was right," Ethan said, remembering her written words. "Stronger together." Sarah's smile reached her eyes for the first time that evening. "My grandmother used to say that healing isn't just about the practitioner or the recipient. It's about the connection between them, the circuit they create together." As they continued talking, outlining practical arrangements and addressing potential challenges, Ethan felt something he hadn't expected. Not resignation to loss, but openness to transformation. What had begun as a chance encounter with a silent child had expanded into something larger, a convergence of lives that might benefit them all. Later that night, after Sarah had retired to the guest suite, Ethan checked on Lily one last time. She was awake, sitting up in bed with her notebook open. Happy, she had written. "Yes," Ethan answered truthfully. "I'm happy your mother found you. She loves you very much." Lily studied him with those perceptive eyes, then wrote, "Stay with you too." "We're working on that," Ethan assured her. "Your mother and I are talking about ways you can have both of us in your life." She nodded, satisfied, and added one more line. "Healing not finished." "No," Ethan agreed, thinking of his legs, of Sarah's lingering grief, of Lily's silence that had begun to crack. "The healing isn't finished for any of us, but I think we've made a good start." As he closed Lily's door, Ethan realized he had navigated the entire bedtime routine standing, using just the wall for occasional support. Another small miracle in a day filled with them, a day that had begun with dread of ending but now felt like a beginning. 6 months later, the Sullivan Institute for Integrative Healing held its grand opening. The modern glass and steel building stood in stark contrast to the century-old structures surrounding it on the Upper East Side, its innovative design a physical manifestation of its mission, bridging traditional healing practices with cutting-edge medical science. In the main atrium, beneath a soaring ceiling that filled the space with natural light, New York's elite mingled with medical professionals, journalists, and families of children with disabilities. At the center of it all stood Ethan Sullivan, not in his wheelchair but upright, supported by a sleek carbon fiber cane. "Mr. Sullivan, can you tell us what inspired the Institute?" a reporter asked, digital recorder extended toward him. Ethan smiled, his gaze drifting to where Lily stood with Sarah near the stage. "Sometimes the most profound healing comes from unexpected sources. The Institute was born from my personal experience with unconventional therapy and a desire to make those approaches available to others, especially children whose conditions have been deemed untreatable by conventional medicine." The reporter followed his line of sight. "Is that the child who reportedly helped with your recovery? The one with the unique therapeutic abilities?" "That's my daughter," Ethan corrected gently. "And yes, she played a crucial role in my rehabilitation. But today isn't about my story. It's about creating opportunities for other families to find hope where traditional medicine has offered none." Across the room, Sarah approached with Lily at her side. The past 6 months had transformed both of them. Sarah had relocated to New York, accepting Ethan's offer to establish her practice within the Institute. Her expertise in therapeutic touch, combined with her formal training in physical therapy, had become the foundation for the Institute's methodological approach. Lily, now 9, walked with new confidence. Her selective mutism had improved dramatically. She spoke frequently with Ethan and Sarah, and occasionally with others she trusted. Her vocabulary, when she chose to use it, revealed an intelligence and insight beyond her years. "They're ready for us," Sarah said, reaching Ethan's side. "Eleanor just arrived. She's being seated in the front row." Eleanor Miller, Sarah's mother and Lily's grandmother, had made the journey from Boston for the opening ceremony. At 72, she carried herself with the dignity of a woman who had practiced healing arts for over 5 decades. Her reunion with Lily 3 months earlier had been another piece of the puzzle falling into place, another connection restored. Ethan nodded, adjusting his grip on the cane. "Ready, Lilybug?" She smiled at the nickname, taking his free hand. "Ready." Together, the three of them made their way to the stage, an unusual family bound by circumstances more powerful than conventional definitions. The custody arrangement they had crafted with the help of both legal teams and child development specialists allowed Lily to divide her time between Ethan's penthouse and the apartment Sarah had taken 2 floors below in the same building. Holidays were spent together, decisions made jointly, their lives interwoven for Lily's benefit. As they reached the stage, Dr. Chen joined them. Her initial scientific skepticism had evolved into passionate advocacy for the Institute's integrative approach. The preliminary case study of Ethan's recovery, published anonymously, had generated significant interest in the medical community. "Packed house," she murmured, surveying the crowd, including representatives from 3 major research hospitals and the National Institutes of Health. Ethan took his position at the podium, Sarah and Lily standing just behind him. The murmur of conversation faded as he prepared to speak. "Welcome to the Sullivan Institute for Integrative Healing," he began, his voice strong and clear. "Today marks the beginning of a journey, one that challenges conventional wisdom about what is possible in medicine, in recovery, and in human connection." As he spoke, Ethan reflected on the extraordinary year that had led to this moment, the chance encounter that had changed everything, the child who had saved him in more ways than one, the mother whose journey had mirrored his own in unexpected ways, the healing that had occurred not just in his body, but in all their lives. "Our mission is simple, but profound," he continued, "to explore the intersection of conventional medicine and traditional healing practices, to validate through rigorous science what generations of healers have known through experience, and most importantly, to offer hope to those who have been told there is none." The speech continued, outlining the Institute's programs: specialized therapy for children with neurological conditions, research partnerships with leading medical institutions, scholarships for practitioners seeking to bridge traditional and modern approaches. As Ethan concluded his remarks, he turned slightly. "And now I'd like to introduce the true inspiration behind the Institute. My daughter Lily has something she would like to share." A ripple of surprise moved through the audience as the small girl stepped forward. Those familiar with her history of selective mutism exchanged glances, wondering what to expect. Lily approached the microphone, adjusted for her height. She looked out at the crowd, her gaze finding her grandmother in the front row, drawing strength from the connection. "Hello," she said, her voice soft but steady. "My name is Lily Miller Sullivan." The hyphenated surname had been her idea, a 9-year-old's elegant solution to the question of identity, embraced by both Ethan and Sarah as perfectly fitting. "1 year ago, I didn't talk. I didn't have a home, I didn't have a family." Her words were measured, carefully chosen. "Now I have 2 homes, 2 families, and a voice." She paused, gathering herself for what came next. "Some people think healing only happens in hospitals with machines and medicine. But healing can happen anywhere, between 2 people, through touch, through music, through love." Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion as she continued. "My great-grandmother taught my grandmother, who taught my mother, who taught me that our hands can help people heal. Now we're teaching others." Lily looked back at Ethan and Sarah, then returned her gaze to the audience. Sometimes the biggest miracles start with the smallest hands. The applause that followed was thunderous, the crowd rising to their feet in recognition of this extraordinary child and the vision she represented. Ethan moved forward, standing beside Lily without leaning on his cane, his hand on her shoulder. For the remainder of the ceremony, they moved as a unit, Ethan, Sarah, and Lily, cutting the ribbon, greeting donors, accepting congratulations. To observers, they presented a unified front, a family bonded by purpose, if not by traditional ties. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the Institute staff had begun the cleanup, Ethan found himself on the rooftop garden with Sarah and Lily. Eleanor had joined them briefly, but had retired to her hotel, the excitement of the day proving taxing for her. The Manhattan skyline glittered around them, the evening unseasonably mild for early spring. Lily had fallen asleep on a cushioned bench, exhausted from the day's events and the emotional energy of her speech. "She was magnificent," Sarah said softly, adjusting the light blanket over her daughter's sleeping form. "I couldn't have spoken in front of a crowd like that at her age." "She's extraordinary," Ethan agreed. "Always has been." They stood side by side, watching the rise and fall of Lily's breathing, the peaceful expression on her face. "Do you ever wonder," Sarah asked after a moment, What would have happened if your wheelchair hadn't malfunctioned that day? If you'd never met her? Ethan considered the question, leaning lightly on his cane. I'd still be in that chair full time. Building companies, making money, living half a life. He shook his head. And Lily would still be silent, still looking for home. And I would still be searching, Sarah added quietly, moving through the world like a ghost, never whole. The year had changed Sarah as much as it had changed Ethan. The return of her daughter had healed something broken within her, but so had the work. The opportunity to formalize and expand the healing traditions of her family, to see them validated by science and embraced by the medical establishment. We've created something remarkable here, haven't we? Ethan said, gazing at the institute building below them. Not just the facility, but this, he gestured between them toward Lily, this family we've pieced together. Sarah smiled. My grandmother used to say that the most powerful healing happens when broken pieces come together to form something new. I think this is what she meant. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that only develops after months of shared purpose and mutual respect. Their relationship had evolved from potential adversaries to collaborative partners to something more complex. A deep friendship grounded in their love for Lily and their commitment to the Institute's mission. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, Ethan said eventually. The physical therapy wing still needs a name. I'd like to call it the Eleanor Miller Center for Therapeutic Touch, to honor your grandmother's traditions and your mother's contributions. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with emotion. She would be honored. Thank you. Lily stirred on the bench, her eyes fluttering open. Is it time to go home? She asked sleepily. Yes, sweetheart, Sarah answered. Your weekend with Ethan starts tomorrow, remember? I'll pick you up Sunday for dinner with Grandma before she heads back to Boston. Lily nodded, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. Can we practice walking on the balance beams tomorrow? She asked Ethan. Absolutely, he promised. Dr. Reed says I'm ready for the advanced course. They gathered their things and made their way to the elevator. As they descended to the lobby, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter on a busy street to this moment of shared triumph, the path had been neither straight nor easy. There had been legal complications, emotional adjustments, medical setbacks. But through it all, they had found their way forward, guided by a child's intuitive wisdom and their collective commitment to healing. The Institute would stand as a testament to that journey, a place where conventional medicine and traditional practices coexisted, where families found hope when conventional treatments failed, where children with disabilities discovered capabilities no one had thought possible. But the true miracle wasn't the building or the programs or even Ethan's remarkable recovery. It was this: 3 broken people finding wholeness together, creating family from fragments, transforming trauma into triumph. In the lobby, they paused to part ways, Sarah and Lily to their apartment, Ethan to his penthouse. Their goodbyes were casual, comfortable, secure in the knowledge that they would reconvene tomorrow, their lives perpetually intersecting. As they stepped outside into the mild spring evening, Ethan set aside his cane and took several unassisted steps down the sidewalk, his gait steady, if not entirely fluid. Lily watched with quiet pride, her hand still in Sarah's. Look, Mama, she said softly. He's walking on his own. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. Yes, he is. And so are you in your own way. Ethan turned back to them, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the Institute's exterior lights. For a moment, they stood together on the sidewalk, Ethan upright without support, Sarah with her arm around Lily's shoulders, Lily looking between them with those wise, perceptive eyes. A family of choice, a miracle of connection, a testament to the healing power of love. As they said their final goodnights, Ethan watched Sarah and Lily walk toward their building entrance. His legs still tingled with the day's exertion, a pleasant reminder of how far he had come since that fateful day when his wheelchair had failed him in the middle of a busy intersection. Tomorrow he would walk farther, the day after, farther still. Each step a small miracle, each movement a victory over what had once seemed impossible. And beside him, guiding him, supporting him, would be the small hands that had started it all, the hands of a child who had brought healing not just to his body, but to his heart. The Sullivan Institute for Integrative Healing would touch thousands of lives in the years to come. But its greatest miracle had already occurred, in the unlikely connection of 3 souls who had found in each other exactly what they needed to become whole. And it had all begun with those first impossible steps. Fim de Historia. Dear listeners, we hope you've been moved by the journey of Ethan, Lily, and Sarah, a story that reminds us that healing comes in many forms and sometimes from the most unexpected sources. If this tale of miracles and second chances touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel for more emotionally powerful stories that explore the depths of human connection. Like this video to help us reach others who might need a reminder that impossible things can happen when we open ourselves to hope. And please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment when something you thought impossible suddenly became possible? Your stories inspire us to continue bringing these narratives to life. Click the link to your left for a specially curated playlist of similarly uplifting tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you in our next story.